Funding for Discovery Road brought to you in part by
Sangre de Cristo National Heritage Area, San Luis Valley Conservation and Connection Initiative, a community regranting program of Colorado Open Lands, LOR Foundation, Rio Grande Headwaters Land Trust, and Western Rivers Conservancy, in collaboration with Mormon Pioneer National Heritage Area and Northern Rio Grande National Heritage Area.
Hello again, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Discovery Road. I'm James Nelson. In this episode, we look across the border to neighboring states. We'll find some amazing stories about shared history, culture, and heritage. We'll learn how different people connected, mingled, and lived side by side long before there were any borders on the landscape, way out here under western skies. It's an amazing thing, really. The old trails, overlapping several states and regions across America, used for thousands of years by animals, different peoples, all on their way to the next stop, for food, family, and the good life. We found rock art and images on stone along many of the trails in Utah and northern New Mexico and southern Colorado, pushing us to learn more about trails. So, in the oldest operating hotel in Colorado, we found a trail guide.
So they really do matter. They're migration corridors of people in and out of the San Luis Valley. So, and then later on, the early pioneers in Spanish came along and used the same routes because they were already established long ago.
In the courtyard of the historic Windsor Hotel, a colorful wall of stories about people on the move, a mural depicting the flow of people from those early trails as they converged on the San Luis Valley.
It was how people connected, and as they connected, like in southern Colorado and northern New Mexico and on into Utah, a lot of times they would settle. They maybe would settle for a short while, for a winter, and other times they would settle for long periods of time. And that's how you got the blending of cultures.
In the 1800s, Mormons established hundreds of settlements in numerous states, Mexico, and Canada, including the San Luis Valley. 8,000 square miles of beauty and wonder, filled with a variety of people who trailed in from near and far, bringing their cultures, traditions, and hopes for tomorrow.
You can count the seeds in an apple, but you can't count the apples in a seed. And I think that has a lot of bearing in this story about the connection between the Sanpete Valley and the San Luis, Colorado Valley. There's a series of remarkable events that occur over a 30-year period of time, and it really begins in northern New Mexico with a Mormon Battalion soldier meeting a man named Francisco Esteban Salazar.
This Mormon Battalion monument in northern New Mexico is a reminder of the real conflicts out west and a clue to one of the more amazing stories we discovered. The Mormon Battalion is the only religion-based outfit in United States military history. 500 strong, some with their families in tow, marching from Iowa to California, nearly 2,000 miles. 20 soldiers died on the merciless trek. As the soldiers approached Santa Fe, they noticed canals for irrigation near the riverbanks, an impressive method the Spaniards had of bringing water to their fields. And it was here that a group of soldiers fell ill and couldn't continue. That brings us back to Francisco Salazar. He and other Hispano families took care of the sick and starving Mormon Battalion soldiers. They were saved. One of the infantrymen gave Salazar his most prized possession, the Book of Mormon. It was a gesture of kindness that would change forever the landscape of the vast San Luis Valley. It's a big event every year in Utah's San Pete Valley. Streets are crowded with excitement as the parade floats by, carrying the past, showcasing the future. A celebration with food, costumes, dancing, and remembering the people who helped settle this valley in central Utah, the Scandinavians, and their many contributions as stonemasons, architects, farmers, and their tireless efforts in establishing Zion, not only here, but in southern Colorado as well.
The saints were trying to settle and establish Zion in the Western Hemisphere.
87-year-old Frank Crowther proudly holding his copy of The Crowthers of Fountain Green, a family history, including Thomas Crowther's role in leading Mormon Danes to the San Luis Valley, to lay out town sites and build lives.
They were milleries, they sheared the sheep, they were farmers, they had to grow their own crops. They, everything that was provided, they produced. They had to be a jack of all trades and able to do everything. Yeah, the Scandinavians did prove themselves. They did show ability to adjust and make things work and survive and even prosper.
Hans Jensen was another of the Scandinavian Mormons assigned to start the new settlements.
He took his daughter and his son, and in fact, there was 7 people in the group that went over with him. And he stayed there for 2 years. And they built a church and organized a branch of the Mormon Church.
Researching her great-grandfather Hans Jensen led Joanne and her husband to the Hans Jensen Journal, which chronicled how tough it was getting to the San Luis Valley. So about 25 years ago, they followed in Jensen's footsteps, but in a car on a road trip.
And he spoke in his journal about many hardships that they went through. Wheels would fall off the wagons and they had to restore the wheels, and they had trouble finding food for the animals, the horses and other animals that they took along with them.
And this woman's great-grandfather, Daniel Sellers, assisted in bringing saints from the south to the big Colorado Valley.
So you had an interesting combination of southern settlers, Utah, mostly Danish ancestry, and then the Hispanic people that already lived here. So it was an interesting combination of cultures. And I'm sure at times it was perhaps a little hard to get along, or at least hard to learn to get along.
When 2 cultures mix, there's always some put-downs and some people that think that they don't have the right accent and they're not as good as others who have the accepted accents or ideas that are acceptable, more acceptable.
Zion was not an easy construct in the San Luis Valley. Different people bringing in their own customs, traditions, language, and of course, a little baggage like polygamy. And if anyone knows the history around here, it's this man, Dennis Lopez. He's a 7th-generation native of the valley. His ancestors, among the very first to set foot in this place.
One of the other conflicts that occurred here in the valley was because of religion. And the conflicts that occurred there were racial and religious. When the American and Mormon pioneers came in, there was a difference of language and not being able to communicate with each other because of language. There was a difference of race because the Americans saw the Hispanics as being of a lower race, or especially if they were even intermixed with the Native American.
That brings us back to the Mormon Battalion and a family treasure revealed inside of this box, where we once again begin to understand how people connect and get along.
My second great-grandfather's name was David Pettigrew. He was called by Brigham Young to be the spiritual leader and the chaplain over the entire Mormon Battalion. He carried this Book of Mormon with him throughout the entire battalion march. The Book of Mormon, like I mentioned earlier, was a show of paramount appreciation to those Mexican settlers down there that took care and nurtured and cared for and nursed the battalion members back to health. That was a great sacrifice. The only reason they were on the trek was because of the Book of Mormon. The power that that Book of Mormon carried with it. It was the power of the Almighty.
Remember, Francisco Salazar received a Book of Mormon but couldn't read it because he didn't read English. He passed it on to his son, Antonio de Jesus Salazar, who could read it, and it changed his life. He became a better person and found success as a rancher. In the meantime, the San Luis Valley started getting unwanted visitors. The Mormons were coming. As the Mormons struggled to survive in the new surroundings, Salazar stepped in with cattle, land, and irrigation help. But he paid a price for his kindness. He was ridiculed by his own people for becoming a Mormon and derided by other Mormons because of his heritage. For many years, the only chronicle of Antonio's story was in this 1991 Ensign magazine article. But his legacy does live on. This small gathering of descendants in the state of Utah is proof.
As I read that article of Antonio Salazar, it really touched my heart because his daughter, Fermina, is my grandmother. And that lineage is really important. And she was like pioneers without wagons. I loved it.
It helped me realize that I finally had my own pioneer story. My pioneers didn't come across the plains, but Antonio was there to help those who did.
This is Antonio's daughter-in-law. She was married to Pedro. And I used to like to go to her home and visit a lot. She taught me how to make apple pies, and the apple pies are good.
I am a descendant of Antonio Salazar, and I've heard his story my whole life. And when I was getting engaged, we found out that my husband's great-great-grandfather was possibly the man who gave my great-great-grandfather the Book of Mormon.
You heard right. A Mormon Battalion descendant marries a descendant of Antonio Salazar. From his birth in Chimita, New Mexico in 1850 to an heroic life among different people. Not just a magazine story, but a family story shining across the American landscape. The San Luis Valley started out a very long time ago as a massive lake, and from that ancient lake to the very first recorded water right in Colorado, the People's Ditch, water has been vital to life here. But it's nothing new. The West has always been a thirsty place.
But I do hear, yo oigo el agua que está pasando. Y me da ganas de meter la mano y sentirla cuando pega el agua en la mano.
The water speaks to Juanita Martinez, and the acequias, the historic canals or ditches that carry the water, there's a powerful emotional connection there as well.
We irrigate 1,062 acres with this one particular ditch, or this acequia. We are 62 parciantes. Parciantes means that we are irrigators with the water right to irrigate. And this method of irrigating has been going on for over 150 years. And so the ditches have been handmade. They were made by the villagers who established here before 1850, I would suppose.
Centuries-old traditional irrigation ditches, channeling water out over farm and ranch land, quenching the thirst of the dry soil, thereby allowing crops to grow, families to be fed, all while saluting the heritage.
It's important for us that we maintain this way of life. And I'm not against technology. We are using technology. We're using a gated pipe system now that helps us spearhead or choose the area of our fields that we feel need more water and some parts that need less water. So what's happening by using that technology, we are actually saving water.
The Land Water Balancing Act is part of the family story here, a very important part.
Because not enough rain in the summertime. You've got to have the ditches. It's extremely important.
Kelly Soward's passionate water battle started a long time ago. You could say it began along the Mormon Trail with his maternal grandfather, Samuel Jackson. Just 11 years old, the boy would recount the harrowing journey where he survived off parched bone marrow, animal feed, and where he was stranded near a crossing of the North Platte River. Kelly's family were early pioneers in the San Luis Valley, and he would go on to proudly serve during World War II. But it's the water war that has consumed much of his adult life. Drought, water rights and rules, court battles, water wells, and seeing families struggle.
And it made me sick at my stomach. And I knew a lot of them that couldn't afford it, that they had to have water or haul. And some were widows that couldn't haul. And people were having to take water to them. Right here in this valley with all this water. I said, I'm in this till I die.
Just a couple of miles from the confluence of the Rio Grande and Conejos River, Los Sauces, Colorado. That's where we found the Martinez brothers and their family story about land and water.
We were originally from the Taos area. Most of our ancestors were born in El Rito, New Mexico, or Chamita. And they used to come to herd their sheep and cattle, where it is now the Taos Monument. But this was done a long time ago, and so the people moved over here because of the water, and it was an oasis. And this community was a thriving community with a lot of people because the large farms hadn't taken over yet.
This beautiful, sprawling Martinez ranch didn't happen overnight, and it wasn't easy. But the water was one of the main ingredients.
And that's why I think our great-grandfather settled there, because it was easy to access the water, and then they dug all the acequias and ditches with the fresnos and the workhorses and everything like that. It's pretty amazing if you look back in history and look at the work and stuff that was put into that, but in those days, what made people come together was actually the poverty. They needed each other at that time in history.
They needed each other to battle the elements, hardship, and adversity, but they succeeded. Their great-grandfather homesteaded the land, 157 acres to start in 1862. And that's grown into a family empire with many successful descendants, plowing new ground in many ways all around the world.
I've grown from the body shop into the salvage yard and expanded that, and then from there I opened up a used car lot. I still have it today. I've had it been there for 40 years, I think. We just kind of kept growing a little bit at a time, and then I bought a ranch in Alamosa. I started raising some cattle there and expanded it to another one. I got a couple of ranches there.
First, God, respect, and hard work, and getting along with your neighbors. I had the opportunity to be a mayordomo, a ditch rider here when I was young, and one thing that really stands out to me of the people that I worked with that are all buried and gone is these people, whenever I knocked on their door, they really had a lot of hospitality.
A short visit with three brothers, like a cup of coffee with good neighbors. We asked the eldest brother, Tony, to tell us his philosophy on life and getting along with people. His answer, his beautiful answer, in English and Spanish.
I'd like to help people. And if you love everybody, well, you'll be a success in anything you do. De modo que yo siempre crié a mis chamacos a que estudiaran y que fueran buena gente. Y esa es la filosofía que tengo yo, llevar a la gente.
There's one more thing we thought you should know about the Martinez story. It's right there. The three brothers holding on to history, the family prize, the original land deed, signed over to the family by President Grover Cleveland in 1887. As we traveled around the San Luis Valley, we found art and artists in abundance, a wide array of cultures, traditions, customs, and stories.
I am the longest and only native-owned shop here in Taos, New Mexico on Taos Plaza. I've been here for over 18 years. I represent about 28 different native artists, and I make the peace pipes that rest on cottonwood bark stands in here, which is how I started my business.
This is the La Fonda Hotel. It'll be 200 years old next year. We have very historic setup here. For example, the hand-carved piece behind me, the hand-honed wood, which is part of the original building.
There are murals galore by the streets in the small towns, a galloping horse mural giving fast directions by a highway. A covered wagon team seems to be rising out of a wall. A charming smile, an engaging short story mural. Fish, sheep, classic cars for a parking lot mural. Outdoor big screen style storytelling.
This particular piece talks about the area in a general sense where it was first inhabited by Native American tribes, and then the Spaniards came in. There's reference to them coming along with the LDS community, and the Dutch. Agriculture played a huge part in settlement here, and I believe that's represented in this picture. And then kind of later on, the railroads brought in more traffic and more people to the area, and they're also represented on this mural.
This taking it easy dog pointed us to some more art across the street there, inside a very historic little market, where we found not the art of keeping an old-style grocery store going for more than a century, but right behind the lady giving directions, on the wall above the meat counter, passionate art.
This kind of cross is made in here in New Mexico. I think it's from Albuquerque, and the artist is Kenny Gallegos. And this piece, I think, is made in here in Arizona. I don't know what part of Arizona, but it's come from Arizona.
So you get artists from everywhere, Cesar.
Yeah.
If you don't go to church out here, you still get the lessons. The bell towers, stations of the cross, beautiful missions in all of the neighborhoods, stained glass windows, and ornate furnishings. Exquisite reminders of what matters to the people in this place. I figured it was time to go see a priest about how it all comes together.
So the people, little by little, they start to come in new people from another creed. So the first one who came was the Mormon people. They live in Manassa. The people, even the Catholics, they give a land for them to place, to stay there, and they supported them. I think so. We have a very good neighbors. They are very good Christians. They respect each other. I don't have to remind them. All of us were sons and daughters of God. We need to respect each other as our brothers and sisters. Doesn't matter what is the creed. We believe just in one God.
Y para Guillermo, a su hija también, siempre me olvidar de ella. Y Talía y Espi.
Just across from the post office, right there on Main Street in Manassa, the story unfolds like this sports section of an old newspaper. The smooth, towering statue, the little house, and the fountain of strength where every so often locals can drink in the story of a champion.
This little house is the hub of the community, and it's this little museum that keeps Manassa on the map. People come home usually in July for the celebration of the pioneers settling in the Salt Lake Valley, but they always manage to come in and renew their acquaintance with Jack Dempsey. And so to me, it's just interesting. It's a place for families to come and renew and appreciate the roots where they came from.
Jack Dempsey was born in Manassa, raised as a Mormon and proud of it, but ashamed that he practiced Jack Mormon ways. He would rise above poverty and hardship, though, to become heavyweight champion of the world and forever be known as the Manassa Mauler.
This little house isn't just important to me, it's important to so many people all over the world. And I'm always so amazed at how many people from different countries come here and they can tell me about Jack Dempsey. I have found that though we don't always speak the same language, we both speak Jack Dempsey, and with a little time and patience and a lot of giggles, we can have a pretty good conversation about the heavyweight champion.
A proud helping of Americana, an amazing boxer from a century ago, still bringing in the crowds.
So many kids come through here and they ask, you know, do you think I could do what Dempsey did? And of course the answer is, well, you know, if Jack Dempsey could, anybody can. You just have to remember to keep on fighting, never give up. And I think that's what draws him, is he never gave up, and he didn't come from wealth or from privilege. He came from Manassa, Colorado.
For visitors stepping into the Dempsey Museum, it's like being ringside on an historic fight card. It packs a powerful punch. And for the Manassa folks, the locals, young and old, it's their hometown hero in their corner, exhorting them to always give yourself a fighting chance. The roads to settlement are always busy, and who knows who might be coming down the road and building a place in the neighborhood.
I came here in 2010 from Ohio, Wayne County, Ohio, and I was here to visit some friends, and I just loved the area, and I loved the agricultural part of it. In Ohio, we have a lot of small farms and stuff like that we get into, and this is kind of like Ohio, but it's not near as full, not near as populated as it was in Ohio. In Ohio, we got a lot of we've been there for, you know, a couple hundred years, and it's getting populated, very much populated. And here, we've got the farm country, we've got the mountains, and what's not here to live, you know?
This valley was first European people in here were in the 1600s, you know. That was a lot earlier than a lot of the U.S., so there's a lot of history here. So
the Amish story is still pretty new. In the San Luis Valley, they're framing a future, looking past a few early calls to get out and go away.
As far as the different cultures, everybody seems to get along great, you know. It seems that there's enough differences here that nobody notices the differences. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Well, yeah, it's pretty quiet. Everybody seems to accept each other here, so, and I like that. Yeah, it's that part of it's great. So
down this little dirt road just inside a small building, the Amish bakery is busy, filling the morning air with savory smells of fresh fruit on the stove and delicious homemade baked goods piping hot out of the oven. But it was the name of the bakery that caught our eye. Worth the drive, the sign says. Yes, indeed, for the jars of honey, jams, cinnamon rolls, and yummy breads, well worth it. And for these families, worth the drive to a new life in a new neighborhood.
We kind of bring the people from back east and we say, okay, come on in. But we say, you can't change us all, you know, you can join us. And that's what I think is the power and the wonder of the heritage areas, especially when it's multi-state, is that you can have shared experiences in our past and shared you know, desires and ambitions in the present, and often a sharing of the genetic makeup that we all have.
Ancient trails and the many tracks that followed, people on the move searching for their place in the world. And when they found it, the journey wasn't over. Living off the land, shaking a fist at the wind, dancing with rushing waters, all in order to feed their families and build communities. A timeless, enchanting story about humanity. I'm James Nelson. We'll see you next time out here on Discovery Road.